experience. His research focuses on climate-smart agriculture, food and water security, crop, soil, water uh, management, livelihood improvement, agriculture and water education, engagement and capacity building, and environmental sustainability. Currently working as adjunct associate professor at the Western Sydney University, Australia. Before joining Western Sydney University in 1992, he had worked with other institutions including South Australian Department of Primary Industries, Queensland Department of Primary Industries, and International Crop Research Institute for Semi-Arid Tropics in India. He was awarded many prestigious and highly competitive scholarships. He has initiated over 24 major externally funded research projects. He has more than 294 publications. So now over to Dr. Samsul Huda for chairing the full session. Over to you, Dr. Huda.
Thank you, Dr. Ramangshu. You have done an excellent job in developing this program for Kees. I won't say much at this point in time, but the assembled number of people who knew him and Jackie very closely, worked with him and them very closely. So without doing much, I think I'd like to request you, Ramangshu, to welcome the participants, please. I don't need to say much about you. You've been in excellent work and everybody knows about you. So please go ahead and welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Huda. It is indeed a distinct honor and pleasure to welcome all the participants in today's webinar in the remembrance of Kees Stigter, founding president, International Society for Agriculture Meteorology. On behalf of International Society for Agriculture Meteorology, I extend warm welcome to Dr. Kees Stigter, son of Professor Kees Stigter and Associate Professor of Hydrogeology and Groundwater Resources at the Institute of Water Education in Netherlands. Mr. Robert Stefanski, Chief of Agriculture Meteorology Division, World Meteorology Organization, Geneva, Switzerland. Dr. Manava Shivakumar, Founding Editor-in-Chief, Weather and Climate Extremes, and ex-Chief of Agriculture Meteorology Division, WMO, Geneva, Switzerland. Dr. Lakshman Singh Rathod, former Director General of Meteorology, International Consultant, World Bank and UNDP. Dr. Federica Rossi, Senior Researcher, Institute of Biometeorology, Italy. Dr. Arvindo Brunini, Director, Agriculture Research Support Foundation, Brazil. Professor Sue Walker, Principal Researcher, Principal Researcher in Agrometeorology, Agriculture Research Council, Natural Resource and Engineering, Pretoria, South Africa. Dr. O.Y.S. Ramakrishna, ex-Director, Central Research Institute for Dryland Agriculture, and Dr. A.K. Huda, School of Science, Western Sydney, University, Australia, and all other distinguished participants, delegates joining the webinar. The very purpose of organizing this webinar is to pay tribute to Dr. Cornelis Johan Kees Stigter for his untiring service to the farming community of the world, and also building capacity to number of professionals currently engaged with the subject of agrometeorology. Kees Stigter was an experimental physicist by education and agrometeorologist, climatologist by profession. He studied physics in Amsterdam in 1966 and did his PhD in agriculture in 1974. There is a long list of countries he visited for development of science of agriculture and meteorology. Dr. Kees was the mentor and also inspired all of us to work for the development of different facets of agrometeorology. His advocacy in new educational commitment such as science field school and climate field school for farmers and extension agents to assist them in responding to climate change through their own innovation is truly exemplary. Other areas of his interest were microclimate, shelter beds for protection of crops, storage of grains, timing of plantation, erosion control, agroforestry, uh, agriculture extension, agromet intermediaries, roving seminar, and others. Also, he has made endless contribution in the subject of agriculture meteorology, and may not be possible to highlight all these things in a very stipulated time. Uh, 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 However, in today's program, we will get a chance to hear the great work done and initiated by Kees for the agriculture community and global users of agrometeorology information from six eminent speakers, as well as from Tibor and Robert Stefansky also, who have seen him closely and also got chance to work with Kees. Today's program includes presentations on four thrust areas of agrometeorology, that is agromet education, training, research, and operational service, which will definitely help us to plan future activities of INSAM, as well as those engaged in the emerging science of agriculture meteorology. Finally, I wish that fruitful presentations and interactions in today's program will allow tackling a number of difficult issues related to agromet education, training, research, and services. I have no doubt that joint interactions will form the basis for effective and well-coordinated agromet activities to help shape and chalk out roadmap for the future agromet activities of INSAM. I wish you all the best. Thank you and a good day.
Thank you, Dr. Navangshu. It's my pleasure to invite Dr. Tibor Stigter. And you mentioned briefly, but I just read a few sentences. In addition to that, he's an associate professor of hydrogeology and groundwater resources. And his main areas of expertise are groundwater resources assessment and development in adaptation to climate and global change, hydrochemical and geophysical study of groundwater surface water wetland interactions and impacts from contamination and salinization. He has over 15 years of experience in research, education, and training in projects in Europe, South America, Africa, and Asia. Dr. Tibor Stigter, please, your turn.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Samsul. And yes, I would like to start by thanking Dr. Lambansu, of course, for the invitation to give this brief introductory talk on this webinar on the remembrance of my father as founding president of INSAM. Of course, I'd like to thank all of you who contributed to the organization of this webinar, with a particular thanks to the speakers and a warm welcome to all of you who are attending the webinar. Of course, it's very heartwarming to see the gratitude shown by all of you, and also the importance of the legacy left behind by my father in this field of agricultural meteorology. 5 years have now passed since my father passed away quite suddenly. Of course, he was far away at the time. He was in Indonesia, and it of course feels a bit sad still to never have really said goodbye at the time. But he did pass away as he wanted, basically, doing applied research and working with colleagues and with the farmers in the fields when the incident happened. And I also thank Junita and her colleagues a lot for all the support that she gave at the time back in Indonesia. Of course, these are a bit sad times because just last month, his wife, my second mother, Jackie, also passed away. after a brief time of illness. So we're currently we're going through all the things in their house. Of course, finding a lot of documents, bringing up a lot of memories, and well, I myself have fond memories of growing up in Tanzania, in an environment, of course, that my father was very passionate about. Of course, the setting, but also the professional environment, and also growing up with students who were visiting, and when later we were living in the Netherlands, also living near or with us for certain periods of time. And of course, I'm pretty sure it had a good or a large impact on myself, because I went on to become a scientist myself in the field that was mentioned in hydrology, in groundwater hydrology, working through my institute of UNESCO IHE in the Netherlands. And I was, of course, lucky to be able still to have a moment of time there where I was discussing with my father about our fields and the overlap of our fields. And the often large part of our conversation when we met would be about science. And um, I also, well, I was fortunate to be able to work together with him on the book that he considered basically his scientific testament. The book on applied agrometeorology. That was an honor, of course, for me to contribute. I know many of you contributed. It was for him. His main worry when he was writing this book was that he would have an accident or be in an airplane and have a and not be able to finish the book. That for him was really his biggest nightmare almost. And I'll just read to you what he wrote very briefly back in 2010 when he then finally was able to finish the book. He wrote. Dear Tibor, what must be considered as my scientific testament of more than 40 years of work holds a contribution by you of early in your career. Back then, I was also still a young scientist. I am proud that our fields of applied science overlap and that this testimony of that will be on your bookshelf for another 40 years to come. And yeah, of course, my father was much more than just a scientist. I mean, he was a physicist, but he was also a poet and a thinker and almost a philosopher. It's amazing when I go through all the documents that I find also back in the house that we are currently tidying up, because yeah, that's unfortunately the next step in this process. But the hundreds of scientific and non-scientific articles that he wrote, and so yeah, they're just an illustration of how versatile he was in his thinking and in his doing, of course. And I would like maybe to end this brief introduction by his foreword that he wrote. Well, I will not read the whole foreword, but just some things that maybe summarize the way my father thought. Yeah, well, he said, well, he has a kind of an introduction, and then he says that after reflecting for a long time on a paper that he then presented in Madison in the USA, he said that one of my conclusions was that my, between brackets, external ethics in these days, external ethics is a rare but thoroughly accepted reason for deciding to work in and for developing countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And I took that decision more than 40 years ago, he says. This ethical choice was based on my own suffering from the poverty that I witnessed during early travels in these three continents. And then he goes on to say, intuitively applying an interpretation of the Buddhist philosophy of the Four Noble Truths, I learned that one can respond to such personal affliction by this rural suffering from physical and socioeconomic disasters in a practical way, going the eightfold path of the right view, the right thought, the right speech, the right action, the right livelihood, the right effort, the right mindfulness, and the right vision. In doing so, one's private suffering may be diminished as well. And yeah, I think it is beautiful to see what he has what he has done, how he has had influence on so many lives, yours, ours, mine, of course, but many many people in the field, in his very important work that to which you have all contributed. So I would like to thank you once again. Unfortunately, I cannot stay the entire seminar because of what we're doing at the house. Things are moving forward, so I will have to travel. But I wish you a very nice, beautiful seminar or webinar with wonderful presentations on the work to which my father contributed, and I will be looking forward to hearing those as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kees Stigter. Yes, we understand that you're going through a very busy time, so please stay as long as you wish or can.
Thank you.
And if we need to share with you afterwards, of course, Navangshu will get in touch with you.
Thank
you very much again. I just want to let you know that I think the Navangshu, are you recording this presentation? If it's recording, just letting know everybody that the presentation will be recorded. If
Yes,
not recording already. Yeah.
Yes, we have started recording, right.
Thank you. Thank you. So everybody knows about that. That's being recorded. Hopefully everybody is okay with that. Thank you. Now, I request, Mr. Robert Stefanski, Bob, just a brief couple of sentences. Everybody knows you in the system. You are the Chief Agricultural Meteorology Division, co-lead Integrated Drought Management Program for the WMO, and you are coordinating WMO weather and climate activities and projects with the agricultural community. You have provided scientific and technical expertise to promote and develop agricultural meteorological topics, and WMO's Commission for Agricultural Meteorology, and many others. So without going much, please, your time and share your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Samsul, and welcome everybody. And Tibor, just on behalf of the agriculture community, our condolences on your recent loss. We all have fond memories of the various commission meetings where Kees and Jackie were there, and dinners and such. And this is an honor to Kees and to Jackie and all the people they've touched. So we've been in your situation, so we know how difficult of a time this is. So our condolences and all the best to the family. I want to speak more on a personal level. Kees, again, very fond memories of all our meetings. I think, as you mentioned, a poet and philosopher, and as well as an ag meteorologist. I'm just going back in time a little bit, and then I'll pass it over because there's a lot of presentations. He started his interaction with WMO actually as a commission to ag meteorology as a delegate from Tanzania way back in 1983, and then subsequently from the Netherlands. And of course, he was the vice president of the Commission of AgMet from 86 to 91, and the president from 91 to 1999. And I have to say his impact is still felt to this day, especially on the training. He is a model for all of us. I'm trying to really interact and help the members, help the farmers, help people on the ground. And that's something I know I take to this day, a lesson from him. I'm really trying to focus on. In WMO, we have a lot of bureaucracy, but it's always good to be grounded in the people we talk to. So that's a lesson that definitely I've learned from him. And you can see by the call, and I can say also on web, emails, etc., all the students he taught and touched. So his presence has really touched a lot of people on this earth. So I just want to, on behalf of everybody, again, and be more positive, celebrate his work and the people he's touched. So I'm going to stop there. I know we have a long program. Wherever we are, we will raise a glass to both Kees and Jackie. So all the best colleagues, and of course, I'll stay on. And as Tibor said, thanks to Nabasu and the team and Insam of doing this. This is quite an excellent webinar. So I'll end there, and hope to see people in person maybe next year in this difficult time. So I'll leave it there. Thank you all.
Thanks, Bob, for your very worthy presentation, background information about Kees. Now, I request Dr. Y.S. Ramakrishna, and again, many of you would know him, but I'll still read a few sentences about Dr. Ramakrishna. He has over 50 years experience in agroclimatology and rain-fed agriculture, having served for 23 years in the Central Arid Zone Research Institute in India as a climatologist, and then head of division of wind power and solar energy, head resource management in the Central Research Institute for Dryland Agriculture. And that's where I came to know him very closely in Hyderabad when he moved. And CREDA is a very pioneering kind of institute in India, those many of you know. So, and he also held a number of positions over his career and continues to do so and contribute. And we all know that he established Agromet Data Bank and a website of Crop Weather Outlook, and since operating since then, okay? Without much, Dr. Ramakrishna, please, your time.
Thank you, Dr. Huda and Dr. Chattopadhyaya, for giving me this opportunity to speak about the life achievements of Professor Cornelis Johann Kees Stigter. Fondly, we all know him as Kees Stigter, and many of close friends will call him as Kees. But his life and is very interesting as much as his achievements. So that's why I divide these two and call this as a lifetime and achievements of a passionate scientist who devoted his lifetime for the poor farmers' welfare. He has been a down-to-earth scientist and a prolific writer. As you have seen, he has more than 850 publications, and I grade him as A+, a man with noble ambitions and a man with noble accomplishments. So that's why I put A+. Now, talking about the life of Kees Stigter, he was born in Amsterdam in February 1940, just before the Second World War occupation of Netherlands. So his childhood was in harsh conditions. Then after he grew up, he joined his master's degree in physics at the Free University with a 2-year minor option of meteorology, as at that time, they don't have the meteorology as a major subject in Netherlands. And he continues work in experimental physics at Vanderlas Laboratory. But even as a youth, he wanted to work for the alleviation of suffering of the poor people in the third world countries. That was one of his ambitions. Kees wanted to start his work with Dr. Van Wyck, the great scientist, for his PhD. But unfortunately, as Van Wyck passed away, he started working with Dr. Dewitt. He himself was the founder of the modern modeling work. So, and for his PhD, he worked together with Jan Gordian on the microclimate of fodder maize. That was his subject. But he has a passion to develop some instrumentation, especially the porometer at the time. So he wrote his thesis in the meantime on design, calibration, and use of ventilator porometer. And for this, he was awarded the WAU University Research Prize for this first part of his thesis. Later, he got his PhD from Wageningen in 1974. And in 1975, with his friend Charles Brody, his student called his friend, he wrote a book on agrometeorology of multiple cropping in warm climates. And during 1975 to 85, he moved to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, where he worked together with renowned Professor Paul Vita, an innovative and a very warm scientist. And through him, he developed a great interest on the value of traditional knowledge as a starting point for assessing farmers in developing countries. So that was a turning point for him in his life, to think how he can really help the poor farmers. And for the next 30 years, he had been working in Tanzania and other African countries, and he was bringing support from Netherlands. And he started organizing courses in environmental physics for both undergraduate and postgraduate levels at the time. And then he published a lot of publications, and which appeared in many prestigious journals. And in October 1983, he was nominated as Tanzanian candidate for the Sasakawa Environmental Prize. And during this period of 79 to 85, he established the research group of agricultural physics in Tanzania with a focus on specializing in the traditional techniques of microclimate management and manipulation. This again has been a turning point in his life, and this he started a project called Traditional Techniques of Microclimate Improvement (TTMI), which was implemented in Sudan and then Nairobi, and then during the second phase in 1997, Nigeria also joined, and then he called this as a picnic model. And during this period, he made 41 missions to Africa as a visiting professor in Sudan. There are a lot of major works. In fact, I think I must be trampling on Sue Walker's shoes. So I try to be very simple here. So the major work has been on the shelter belts, sand encroachment, how to control it, and then alley cropping, and then combating desertification, and storing of grains in the underwater, extending the shelf life of sorghum grain. And there was always their praises and brickbats also. He was praised for the obvious socio-economic relevance of this kind of work, for his down-to-earth work. But some people have criticized him also, saying they have doubts about the suitability of this work for research, education, and scientific training. So he answered this question, saying, yes, we have published more than 50 papers in scientific journals of repute that itself speaks about it. And our focus is to be more practical and down to earth to help the farmers to utilize whatever the help they have in their hands. Next. So after the success of TTMI project, he has shown that alley cropping is unsuitable in the flatlands, but is suitable in the sloping lands in the semi-arid areas of Africa. That was one of his biggest achievements, which has spread over the large areas in Africa. In Sudan also, he quantified the water waste under different irrigation systems that are being followed, and he has taught new irrigation management systems, and also quantifying sand capturing in shelter belts and wind direction in savanna woodlands as a function of tree density. These are some of his achievements there. And then design and improvement of multiple shelter belts, and also developing dialogues with the farmers for improving their livelihoods using simple traditional micrometeorological technologies. So with all this, he has a lot of pain in his heart, because he found that the vicious circle of poverty and inability to cope with environmental degradation is the most obvious problem in African agriculture, and also the absence of organized and decentralized leadership and efficient governance. And they are the problems which are not able to really make the success expand over large areas. So he felt that his scale of intervention is much too small in spite of all his efforts, and there had to be adequate impacts to upscale these technologies to larger areas in Africa. That was one of his big wishes. He has defined agrometeorological services basically as agrometeorological characterization to response farming, microclimate management decisions upon using the forecasts, then monitoring and early warning approaches, and their validation and adaptation of new strategies. Next, please. Later, he visited Asia also, and he came between 1988 and 1993 under the UNDP FAO program with the purpose of starting the Center for Advanced Studies Agrometeorology, CASAM. Professor Vashney, who is here with us, was the first head of this program, and it was a very successful thing that has happened and is still continuing in Pune. He also made visits to Vietnam during 2000, 2001, and 2003, where he gave a lot of lectures, also at ADPC Bangkok in 2002 and Beijing in 2003. And he tried to promote the picnic model of Sudan in the Asia also, which he called as APMP, Asian Picnic Model Project. And he tried this in China, Indonesia, and Vietnam. succeeding in bringing African experience to and the CGM experience to China, and from China experience back to Africa. And also, as he was visiting Indonesia since 1994, he started giving lectures in the Department of Geophysics and Meteorology there, which is part of IPB there, and also in a consortium of universities in Indonesia. We are happy that he visited us Krida in 2004 on 20th January, and he gave a lecture also to us. You can see my colleagues here, Vijay Kumar and GGSN Rao, and also Radhakrishna from Agriculture University. Only the photograph was so good, he could take only my hand, not me, in the photograph. So I missed him there. So as a visiting professor, he has a lot of skills and expertise. His expertise, you can see the list of more than 30 or 40 disciplines. So I just can't speak about them. But as a visiting professor, he spent a lot of time in South Africa, in the University of Free State with Sue Walker and his team. And also they visited Brazil in 2010, I think, presenting the seminar on meeting farmers' needs and agromet services. And they gave roving seminars in many countries in Africa, more than 30 in 13 countries. And the book, I think, which his son was mentioning just now, Applied Agrometeorology, was very famous. It's more than 1100 pages book. And the reviews on this book by Edgenger says this book could be named as a Bible of how to do in applied agrometeorology. And same as Albert Weiss, the veteran professor from University of Nebraska, he remarked on the book, he said the impetus of the book comes from the desire of the editor to bring together many years of his experience of working in Africa and Asia. And the key concept is that there must be a bottom-up approach to supply useful information to farmers in these countries. That was the main issue, what he was trying to do. And he was a co-author of more than 850 publications, of which about 145 appeared in peer-reviewed journals and 235 invited articles. But his focus mainly was on semi-arid and arid areas and fighting land degradation and desert encroachment. And some of his academic achievements is writing many CGM reports on microclimate management and agrometeorological service reaching the farmers with operational information and low external input agriculture. And main thing is the guide to agriculture meteorology practices, which he has re-edited with working with about 180 people. That was the thing. And then he was nominated by Netherlands for the IMO prize during 2011 and 2013. And his works have been cited by many, more than 3,800 sightings were there. Even after his demise, people are still quoting, more than 700 citations have been there, which are recorded here. Shows that the importance people give to his work and his achievements. Next, please. So other significant achievements is characterization of rainfall, working on multiple cropping strategies, sustainable income to farmers, capacity building through roving seminars, agriculture learning from schools for farmers, then use of crop insurance, and syllabi of various international programs. Just to be brief on that. Okay, next please. Then they are the major services he has as a member of the staff of Wageningen University, 1962 to 1975, and again 1985 to 2005. He was associated with WMO for 25 years, both as vice president and president, and also Commissioner of Agriculture and Meteorology, and also the Dutch principal delegate parallelly during this period of 85 to 2007. And he was associated for 13 years with the National Advisory Board of Netherlands Ministry of Development Cooperation, and also member of many assessment committees, and is president of INSAM from 2001, and I've been maintaining the homepage from 2003, which is now the responsibility of Nabasu. So these are the other affiliations of Kees Stigter, member group agrometeorology, soil, crop and climate sciences, University of Free State, along with Sue Walker in South Africa, then Department of Anthropology in Indonesia, and Agromet Vision, that's a one-man army, which was a one-man show by him, one-man consultancy bureau since 2005. He has been helping various countries and various farming units through this agromet vision. Next. The last years of Kees Stigter he was working on connecting agricultural sciences, environmental sciences, social sciences, extension services in various countries, and also science field schools and climate field schools were some of the focus he was having in the last period. He continued his involvement in project evaluations, including invited lectures in 20 countries, African countries, till 2014. And he unfortunately passed away on May 20, 2016 in Indonesia. His main ambitions have been how to make better use of existing agrometeorological information and to disperse the knowledge to farm level, and how to really prepare farmers for climate extremes and climate use, and then providing agrometeorological, agroclimatological information to solve the farmers' problems. His parting thoughts, I would like to just say what he said in his own words. If one day I happen to see that my end-to-end conceptual diagnostic framework on generation and transfer of agrometeorological services and information has received recognition and has had effects in the domain of the livelihood of the farmers, then I will know that my 40 years of service in agrometeorology has been fruitful. That was his message to all of us. This is unforgettable to any scientist, even to us. So with this, Kees Stigter is signing off, handling the mantle to us and the flame of passion to carry on his dreams forward. Thank you. Sorry, I may took more time.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ramakrishna, for giving an overview of the achievements of Dr. Stigter. Now, what I'd like to say for the next few speakers is we have given you about 20 minutes, but if you like to use about 15 minutes, that will be excellent if you can make it, so that there'll be some time to have some questions now or discussion. I request also the participants to be very short, precise question if there's any. But depending on, we'd like to finish it on time if we can. So without doing much, I know everybody is very well-known speakers now. They'll be speaking. Dr. Shivakumar, is it my machine or somebody else's machine? Can you please mute your system?
It is Shivakumar's mission.
Thank you.
Oh, but here is
Thank
speaking.
you. I am looking for the PowerPoint presentation. Can it be loaded?
Okay, while they're loading, I'll just speak a little bit. So just a couple of minutes about you, just learning Shivakumar. Everybody knows you. He's a big name in agrometeorology. And we have more than 50 years of experience. And we worked together for many, many years. And so you have worked in 150 countries around the world, contributed significantly for the establishment of agromet advisory services in several countries. Right, without saying much, I'd like you to start, Dr. Shivakumar. Please.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the PowerPoint presentation. I have it on my laptop, but I'm not sure whether you can see it. Nabansu, can you load my PowerPoint presentation? Now, can you see the PowerPoint presentation? Like it was done for Ramakrishna, can it be loaded for me, please? Is it being loaded, Nambantsu?
Nambantsu, kindly load Shivkumar's presentation, please.
Can you please load?
Nambantsu, can you put on your mic?
If not, I can. Shall I go ahead and talk even if you don't see the PowerPoint presentation?
So you cannot able to share, Dr. Shivakumar?
I sent it to you 2 days ago.
Okay, what I feel we'll do, Dr. Buddha, can you just go to next presentation so that we can arrange for him?
Okay.
We'll make ready.
All right. So, Dr. Rathore, are you there? And understand, again, everybody knows Dr. Rathore. Shiv, can you just somebody's system is going up. Anyway, everybody knows Dr. Rathore. He was the former director.
Thank you, Samsul, for
in the meteorology department. Yeah, please go ahead, Dr. Rathore. Everybody knows you, so I'll let you speak, please.
so
Wish
kind
you the
of you.
best.
I think that there are a few other microphones which are not muted, and therefore we are getting a lot of.
One is Nambantsu.
Nambantsu, kindly mute yourself. Okay. I would not make any formal presentations and will just give an account of my association with Kees, which is almost 3 decades. And like most of you all, I cherish all those moments which we shared together and worked together. And my chord with Kees was on a special note because both of us work more on application or applied agrometeorology, and therefore we really enjoyed a very non-traditional way of interacting and working together. I first met him when I was young meteorologist at AgriMet division of India Meteorological Department, Pune, during second half of 1980s. I think, as was mentioned by Dr. Ramakrishna, he came to Kasam when Professor Varshney started Center for Advanced Studies in Agricultural Meteorology, and he was at Pune for quite some time. And that was the first interaction, a towering personality. And I was really impressed by the passion with which he used to pursue agromet extension. Of course, he was a good teacher, but his main forte was his extension activities, as we all know. Thereafter, I shifted to National Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting and moved from Pune to Delhi. And in the meantime, he also, at that point in time when we met first, he was vice president of the Commission of Agricultural Meteorology, and then he became the president in 1991. And soon after that, he visited Delhi. And again, we had a very long interaction, and that we consolidated, and then we were in constant touch with each other. And subsequently, the interaction grew leaps and bounds when I became vice president of Commission for Agricultural Meteorology in 2006. And he served on number of CAGM working groups as either chairman or a member, and even also the expert teams. And therefore, of course, Dr. Shivkumar will give more account of his contribution to ETs and working groups, and as vice president and president of the commission. But his the experience which he gained through very working in very different agroclimatic conditions and different agromet settings. As was mentioned by Professor Ramakrishna, he was a prolific researcher and prolific writer, which is, and his account of publications is really very of high ranking and mostly related to agriculture in arid and semi-arid region, as was mentioned by Professor Ramakrishna. But interesting part is that we, when Dr. Shiv Kumar, his famous book on managing weather and climate risk in agriculture, he invited me and Kees to contribute a chapter that was somewhere in maybe around 2005. And he asked us to write on coping strategies with agricultural agromet risks and uncertainties in Asian region. So my experiences at that point in time was limited only to India. Of course, India itself is a continent, but Kees made a significant accountings of not only the risk and uncertainties in Asia, but linking Asian uncertainties and risks to African agrometeorological settings. And at that point in time, I realized that what is the level of depth of the subject which Kees has, and that everything reflect in his work in different writings and ETs and working group. But most importantly, when WMO decided to revise the WMO Guide to Agriculture Meteorological Practices, which is a famous WMO technical note. And during that course of time, of course, he took input from a very large number of agrometeorologists from across the globe, and most of you must have contributed. So also me, and he used to be in constant touch with me, and Dr. G. Srinivasan was also involved in that. And I really found that on each and every aspect of operational agriculture meteorology, Kees was really having so much of knowledge that he was himself an encyclopedia of applied agriculture meteorology. He was towards his distal part of the career more oriented towards agrometeorological extension activities. And I tell you, if you ask me, he is the only person, in my opinion, who may be truly called as agromet extension scientist. And his societal implications of agrometeorology was integral part of his extension services, not only throughout Africa, but Afro-Asian region. And he was always advocating using new educational tools directly to the farmers, and gave a lot of emphasis on training to intermediaries and training to trainers, so as we call it, and made significant contribution through the climate field schools and science field shops, as we call. And he used to have a direct interaction with farmers and extension personnel, and explained through responding to their queries, particularly on agromet practices and more related to climate variability and climate change. And most of that was related to, based on his own experience, of course, with solid agrometeorological foundations, but the toppings he used to give through to the subject by his own experience, be it handling of rainfall data, soil management, pest disease advisories, and different aspects related to choice of different crops in different agroclimatic settings, and addressing climate variabilities directly linked to the climate change as well as traditional knowledge. As Dr. Ramakrishna mentioned, that his love for traditional knowledge was so deep, and he was so much of experiences in observing these changes and linking it to the farmers' perceptions, and then paving the way for generating kind of advisories based on this. And he was a keen observer, and he always used to emphasize on the value of observing, be it not only the meteorological observations, but he used to lay focus more on the plants and other biotic observations, which are kind of weather sensitive. And in some of our discussions, he used to say that he used to monitor birds and grasshoppers and insects and how they change their behavior. And at times, there was a kind of notion that because of climate change, things are changing. But Kees used to always say it is not always the climate change. There is always a strong element of changed habitat, which we change because of the changing cropping practices and so on and so forth, irrigation practices. And therefore, the birds and insects and grasshoppers, they all respond to that change in a more pronounced manner rather than the climate change, which is a slow process. So he used to advocate a very strong observations which indicate these kind of phenomena, which kind of sound the certain traditional observing systems linking to good indications for choosing the date of sowing and etc., because that he used to link the insect behavior with agromet practices, interestingly. And he was also kind of suggest how to adapt to these climate variabilities. And he used to advocate that this adoption in future would be based on the past adaptation. So linking past, present, and future was always his passion. And at the end, I would like to end my talk with a very special note that you all must have remembered. He used to carry a leather bag, and which was as old as almost 40 years. So, and when I used to always tell him, now Tibor might have gone, I used to say that I should get this after you. And he used to jokingly say, sure. And I think Nabanshu, who has now taken the incense forward, is the true, what should I call as person to be having a claim on that. On the lighter note, I'm just mentioning that. It is a great moment for all of us to recall those associations and talk on the contributions made by Kees Stigter to the subject of agrometeorology, which is everlasting, everlasting, everlasting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rathor. A really excellent speech, but particularly from personal point of view and related well what you have done with him. I've seen you working with him in many occasions. Thank you very much. Now, Shiv.
Now we are sharing presentation.
Okay, can I talk?
Yes, I think I just said everybody knows. I don't say much,
But,
particularly.
okay, there is my presentation
Okay.
on educational training in agriculture meteorology. Next slide. Next slide, please. So I had the real pleasure of working with Professor Stigter because he was elected as the president of the Commission for Agriculture Meteorology at the 10th session of CAGM that was held in Florence in 1991. And he served as president of CAGM till 1999. And he continued to serve as the member of the advisory working group of CAGM from 1999. I had the pleasure of working with Professor Stigter from 1996 to 2008 when I was working as the chief of the Agriculture Meteorology Division in WMO. And when I started working as the director of the Climate Prediction Adaptation Branch in 2008, I continued my work with Professor Stigter. At the 13th session of the CAGM, which I organized in Ljubljana in 2002, Professor Stigter was nominated as the coordinator of the support systems for policy making. Next slide. So, as the chief of the Agriculture Meteorology Division WMO, I worked with Dr. Kees Stigter to establish the International Society for Agriculture Meteorology in 2001 to promote the science and applications of agriculture meteorology at the international level. Currently, as you are aware, INSAM is a web-based society and membership is free of charge. INSAM serves as a clearinghouse for information on agriculture meteorology worldwide, and all agrometeorologists are encouraged to become members. All national societies for agriculture meteorology are invited to become members of INSAM so as to provide strong leadership to develop agriculture meteorology in the future. Next slide. So the contributions of Professor Stigter to CAGM is that at the 14th session of CAGM, which I organized in New Delhi in 2006, he presented the topic, capacity building in the area of agrometeorological services through roving seminars in the open forum. So the CAGM 14th session extended his role as the coordinator of the support systems for policy making. CAGM 14 also appointed him as the leader of the expert team on the Guide to Agriculture Meteorology Practices. At the 15th session of CAGM, which was held in Brazil in 2010, we acknowledged the work of Professor Stigter as the coordinator of policy supporting capacity building. The session also congratulated Dr. Stigter on his excellent work as the ET leader for the Guide to Agrometeorological Practices. In the open forum of this session, Professor Stigter made a presentation on INSAM. Next slide. So the importance of agriculture meteorology is that agriculture is the most weather dependent of all human activities. Variations in climate have been and continue to be the principal source of fluctuations in global food production, particularly in the semi-arid tropical countries of the developing world. Agriculture planning and use of agriculture technologies require agriculture meteorology applications. The increasing frequency of natural disasters, including pests and diseases, and growing climate variability and climate change, they're having an impact on the natural resource base, crop yields, and incomes. There are increasing demands for improved preparedness and prediction to deal with these issues. Next slide. So the advances in agriculture meteorology are that there are applications and services in agriculture, forestry, rangeland, and fisheries that have grown enormously in the recent times and is probably the most weather dependent of all. So these include the following, as you could see there. The first one is specific weather forecasts and seasonal to interannual climate predictions. Second one is microclimate management. Third is establishment of measures to reduce the impacts and mitigate the consequences of weather and climate-related natural disasters for agricultural production. Fourth one is monitoring and early warning. Fifth one is development and validation of adaptation strategies to deal with increasing climate variability and climate change. And the last one is application of crop models ranging from the field level to the country level. Next slide. So, as we are aware, farming community has needs. So, we need to have the level of education and skills of farmers, especially in developing countries. It's insufficient to cope with new and aggravating problems. And there's a clear need for trained intermediaries who are equipped with services to assist the farming community in effectively dealing with these problems. Effective education and training in agriculture meteorology at the postgraduate level can ensure a continuous stream of well-informed intermediaries to serve the farming community. Next slide. So, in February 1999, as the Chief of Agriculture Meteorology in WMO, I organized the International Workshop on Agrometeorology in the 21st Century, Needs and Perspectives, in co-sponsorship with a number of organizations. And this workshop was held in Accra, Ghana. Professor Stigter and others summarized the needs and perspectives of agrometeorology in the 21st century under two major headings. The first one is agrometeorological services for agricultural production, and second is agrometeorological support systems for such services. So these include data, research, policies, education, and training. Next slide. So the need for education training is, there is an urgent need to review carefully the curricula in agriculture meteorology at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels, and to ensure that these curricula are fully revised to include new and emerging issues, and that adequate education training material is prepared to serve the revised curriculum. As the chief of the Agriculture Meteorology Division in WMO, I organized the expert meeting on review of curriculum in agriculture meteorology in March 2007 in collaboration with the American Society of Agronomy, the Accademia Georgia Fili of Italy, and the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences of India to develop a revised curriculum as well as recommendations for its effective implementation. 16 experts from Austria, Brazil, Canada, India, Indonesia, Italy, Netherlands, USA, and Zimbabwe attended this meeting. Next slide. So, in the opening session of this meeting, welcome addresses were given by the representatives of four co-sponsors of this meeting. Myself from WMO, Dr. Hatfield, President of the American Society of Agronomy, Dr. Orlandino from the Accademia Georgia Fili of Italy, and Dr. V.P. Gupta from the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences of India. The first technical session in this meeting reviewed the developments made in agriculture meteorology over the years, with the presentations on agriculture meteorology at the global level by myself, and on agriculture meteorology over the years and new priorities and consequences for curricula by Professor Kees Stigter. In the next session of the current status of agriculture meteorology, 7 presentations were made by experts from Zimbabwe, Brazil, USA, Canada, Indonesia, Austria, and Italy. The presentations were made on agriculture meteorology program for master's and doctoral degrees that are offered at the following 5 universities in India: the Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, Punjab Agriculture University, Anand Agriculture University, Acharya Ranga Agriculture University, and the Indian Agriculture Research Institute. Next slide. So the courses proposed in the expert meeting, the meeting proposed agriculture meteorology courses for undergraduate programs and postgraduate programs, and also courses for the intermediaries that are involved in communicating information to farmers. For the undergraduate program, there are these 2 courses. The first is Introductory Agriculture Meteorology. The second is Climate Change and its Impacts on Society. Then for the postgraduate program, there are basic courses which include the following: Fundamentals of Meteorology and Climatology, Weather and Climate and Crops, Weather, Climate and Livestock, Meteorological Hazards in Agriculture, Agrometeorological Measurements and Instrumentation, Micrometeorology, Analytical Tools and Methods for Agriculture Meteorology. Next slide. So, in the postgraduate program, we also have applied courses that include strategic use of climate information, coping with climate variability and climate change, coping with extreme meteorological events, tactical decision making based on weather information, development of risk management strategies. For the intermediaries, who are mainly in the governments, there are 2 issues. One is agrometeorological related syllabus for in-service training of the A-domain agrometeorological extension intermediaries. And the second one, agriculture meteorology syllabus for the in-service training of domain agrometeorological extension and intermediaries. So the meeting discussed the detailed syllabuses and core competencies for these different courses so that competencies can be improved. Next slide. So next issue that I want to talk about is training. The training is for user communities. So agrometeorological training for user communities can cover the spectrum from institutions and governments to farmers at the subsistence level. Second is in-service training can play a significant role in updating national meteorological and hydrological service personnel with recent technologies and methods and in refreshing the knowledge and methods gained by agromet personnel. The third is methods, procedures, and techniques for disseminating agrometeorological information to cooperative extension services and other users that understand its value. Next slide. So the potential training modules for the National Meteorological Hydrological Service personnel include the following: data management tools, mapping tools, climate drought indices, remote sensing, yield forecasting, bulletin design and layout, internet web technology. Next slide. For the enabling institutions and governments, it's important to have integrated perspectives on climate risks in current national policies in different sectors that will lead to increased adaptive capacity in current as well as future climatic variability. So these include the following: water resources management, disaster management, land use, biodiversity conservation, and agriculture development. Next slide. So we also organize roving seminars on weather, climate, and farmers. The objective of roving seminars is to make farmers become more self-reliant in dealing with weather and climate issues that affect agriculture production on their farms. Typically, roving seminars are one-day duration, and they bring together farmers from a group of villages to a centralized location in any given region. The program for the seminars has two parts. The part one is weather and climate of the farming region, climate change and farming risk. Part two is the farmers' feedback on the perception of weather and climate information provision and feedback. Next slide. So I organized the roving seminars on weather, climate, and farmers in West Africa for 4-year project from 2008 to 2011, which involved 15 countries, and I organized 140 seminars. 5,700 farmers participated in these roving seminars, including 1,000 rural women. 3,000 rain gauges were distributed to 2,800 villages in West Africa. Next slide. So in conclusion, I would just like to say that agrometeorology evolved into a mature science today, and there are exciting opportunities to help agriculture world cope better with weather and climate issues. There is a growing demand for agrometeorological services and modern technology, and modern technologies make it possible to provide these services in a timely and efficient manner. The third is changing nature of agrometeorological research and applications necessitates a thorough reevaluation of agrometeorology curriculum at the university level. And last one, agrometeorologists must collaborate actively with agronomists, soil scientists, and crop protection specialists. Next slide. So the communication with farmers and policymakers must be improved to enhance applications at the field level. There's a need for more active collaboration with social scientists. The number of agrometeorologists worldwide is small. Hence, active efforts must be made to forge strong links at both the national and international level. The INSAM and CAGM are making efforts to bridge this gap at the international level, but much needs to be done to promote agrometeorology as a science at all levels. Next slide. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Shivakumar and Shiv, for timely presentation, and you made it time. We have the time for 1 or 2 questions if there is anybody has anything to ask Dr. Shivakumar. Otherwise, you can move to the next presenter. But because you kept it within 20 minutes time, anyone would like to say anything to Dr. Shivakumar? Other than that, he has given a very detailed presentation of what he has done and over time, particularly in collaboration with Dr. Kees Stigter. So I've seen that. So any comments from anyone? Dr. Sheikh, you want to say something? Do you raise your hands? No. Okay. Just one thing, Dr. Shivakumar, Shiv, it seems to that you have two services connected, and this is okay. Yeah. Okay. That's okay. So we can move on to the presenter. Maybe towards the end, we can have some discussions then. Okay. Next speaker that we have is Miss Dr. Federica Rossi. And again, we don't need any more introduction, but I'll still read a couple of sentences. She is a senior researcher, the National Research Council of Italy, Institute of Bioeconomy, and researcher at the Siena Institute of Bioeconomy, previously Biometeorology. Is an acting director of the same institute, vice president elected of Commission Agricultural Meteorology for the WMO, 2010 to 2018. And then she was also responsible and coordinator for the numerous international national projects, European Union projects, national delegate at cost actions, a number of other activities she's involved. And so without much time, I'll request Dr. Rossi.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And really, I'm grateful to Nabatsu for having organized this seminar and also for the invitation. You may see in the title of this first slide that climate smart agriculture and agrometeorology are the topic of this remembrance of Professor Stigter. May I have the next slide, please? Okay. All us know about this current solicitation that we have for a transition, I would say an evolution instead, to an agriculture that should be more in synchrony with the changing climate and the changing needs of a population that is growing. So a step change towards what is called climate smart agriculture. That is both a cultural and a cultural process, if I may say. For such a more economically, socially, environmental sustainable, resilient, and mitigating agriculture that are the three pillars on which CSA is based, the backbone science is definitely agrometeorology. In fact, agromet is the unique science that offers most of the tools that are able to support such an evolution. In fact, it is an applied science that is so dense of fundamentals and offers operational solution. The next slide, please. Okay, how we can describe our agricultural system? There are groups of individuals that live, capture, transform, and disperse energy and matter with the final objective to produce biomass that is edible or not. They do this with an efficiency ratio, so the ratio between what is obtained or released and what has been used or uptaken, and higher is the ratio, the better we can assume that is the production process. And the ratio can be in euros, in money, in energy, in water, and in other examples. The next one, please. So what smart production system do in difference with the traditional one? They use less inputs or the amount of inputs is optimized to obtain an output that has a higher value. That can be, this value can be accounted in various ways, sometimes additive to reach multifunctionality, what is called multifunctionality. What we produce may be have an higher efficiency, an higher environmental value, can release or absorb more greenhouse gases, may allow better revenues for farmers, can have an higher nutritional value, and others. The next is, please. Okay, let's have a look to the inputs that concur to production. Biology, of course, and physiology of plants. Then, so which crops we are growing, then the environment where we grow the crops. And so what is the local climate, the meteo, the geography, the soil characteristics, and then the management, how we grow the crops, if we adopt or not sustainable practices, how we manage the fluxes of energy and matter. So in synthesis, smartness is the right species in the right place and in the right way. And Ahmed is really, I think, is the driver. See some examples where to grow. Agrometeorology and agromet observation are the basis of zoning. So growing in location that was suitable to crop, to the specific crop needs. To choose the places where climate, microclimate, and also management work in synergy to create a product that is, for its peculiar quality and characteristic, is obtainable only in those conditions. In this case, AgMet is the basis for possible strategic adaptation, for example, to be advised that local climatic condition will be not suitable anymore for a certain crop to provide a substitution. And then you see below the right way. So also here, the role of AgMet services is enormous. Thanks to the weather monitoring and forecast for seedling, for example, for fertilizing, for pest and disease treatments, to application of remote sensing, Internet of Farming, big data provision, that are the tools that support farmers integrating with their existing abilities and competences that are still the basis. The next, please. So the idea is that resources can be thought not just in a unique way. For example, water is not only for irrigation, but can be an efficient instrument to reduce losses or damages that are due to extreme events, as conditioning against the summer heat waves and spring frost, for example, using the same irrigation plans and adopting water-saving techniques. The next. So please let me remind the meeting we had a few weeks ago with Nabanso, with Sue and Orivaldo, that was very precious for their support, in concomitance with the G20 Minister of Agriculture that was held in Florence, where we discussed the need to face up water urgencies in the light of increasing temperature, increasing evapotranspiration, erratic precipitation scenario, floods and droughts. And the meeting was really interesting and is registered. You can see the address on YouTube there, so you can access through this link. And I'm glad I had the opportunity the day after to go to the Global Forum of Ministers and present several of the results of our meeting. So I think this was important. The next, please. Okay, the third pillars of climate smart agriculture is mitigation. Often agriculture is pointed as greenhouse gas emitters, but we are not sure that is always true. Also in this case, agromet plays a role. This is the title of a paper that we just published. If may have the next slide, please. Okay. We used a technique that is part of agrometeorology, this is micrometeorology. So we used the ecovariance technique to assess the amount of CO2 that was absorbed by the complex canopy and soil of a kiwi fruit orchard. Kiwi fruit is almost a growing crop because it's very well adaptable to many local conditions. And uses a lot of water, but is very efficient in carbon fixation. So what we realized that the absorption of CO2 from this such kind of cultivation, of course, if well irrigated, was much higher than the amount of greenhouse gas CO2 equivalents released utilizing normal management. So the canopy acted as a sink instead of a source. But attention, because this happens in climatic normal here. when we made the same measurement in a year that was really hot, in a hot summer, we saw that the situation reversed. So the canopy and the system was not a sink anymore, but become a source. So it's very strategic to look also the climatic condition of the year to assess if a crop is mitigating and how much is mitigating or how much is contributing to greenhouse emission. The next one, please. Okay, so I think that in the light of this, in summary, and also to close, to produce more food with less, that is our need now, is a process that can be done also by an approach that is a multi-actor approach, a co-creation approach, in which the whole communities integrate. So from science that provides tools and information to farmers, to technology providers, also involving the citizen and the consumers. Of course, policymakers, because they are the ones who have the final decision and can push really a new form of agriculture. And of course, we need to integrate the tradition because farmers are good, farmers know what they do, they are used to work in a stable environment, but now in this scenario, they need more support. So we need to integrate the traditional knowledge with the new technologies that this is only offered by AgMet. Okay, the next, please. Okay, just a few words to Professor Stigter. I worked with him for many, many years because I was editing INSAM and I received emails from him almost every day. So it was a very, very active website, it was a very active association. And now I'm very glad that Nabansu took the INSAM presidency to maintain the legacy. When Kees passed away, we received in our website so many phrases. I just put some of them here from colleagues coming from all countries that defined the Kees an encyclopedia, a mentor, of course, an inspirator, an example, and a passionate leader. So I think we should work. We are proud to have worked with him. We will do our best. These are the 4 presidents of the CAGM with whom I had the pleasure to collaborate. And so we will do our best to maintain the good tradition that was started from CAGM and other society to support again farmers in this evolution process. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Federica Rossi. Again, you have allowed some time for us to have some discussion. If there is anyone want to ask any short questions and comments to Dr. Rossi, most welcome. Otherwise, we'll just move on and then you have some time towards the end, I think, to discuss. Okay, so the next speaker that we have, 2 more speakers, Dr. Orivaldo Bruneni. Again, he doesn't need much of the introduction, but I'll still read a couple of sentences. He's the President, Foundation for Support Agriculture Research, Coordinator, Integrated Center for Agrometeorological Information, and he has more than 40 years of international experience on agrometeorology, agroclimatology, soil-water plant relationships, having served as a senior researcher at Agronomic Institute and former General Director, Agronomic Institute, visiting professor, University of Sao Paulo, and many other positions. And he also was contributed for the establishment of agrometeorology service in the state, and the former vice president of CGM and member of the Standing Committee on Agricultural Services, WMO, and long other contributions. Dr. Bruneni, please.
Good morning, good day to everybody. To thank the invitation, but I may have a problem with the presentation here. Nabansu. If I click here to present now, there is nothing coming through. So
You are sharing from your side, Dr. Brunini?
Sorry. Say again.
Dr. Brunini, you are sharing from your side the presentation? Or who will share it to you?
It's open the PowerPoint here, but it's not coming to the...
Brunini, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Whether we will share you or you will share?
Yeah. There is no share here at this web.
We will share from our side?
Yes, if you can do that.
Look for the box with the arrow. There's a little box at the bottom with the arrow going up. This is the sharing one. At the very bottom. Yeah. Then you can choose which window you want to share.
I'm sorry. There's a arrow here to present now. I click here on window. No. More options? No. So you have the presentation.
You just tell us whether we'll share from our end or not.
Okay. Can you do that? Present from here, from there? There is no sharing. Okay. Okay. So I want to thank you for the invitation to make this presentation. It's a pleasure to bring some aspects regarding agrometeorological service. Next one, please. The importance of this seminar. We should consider the importance of a person who devoted his life to agrometeorology and the people welfare. Person, recognize the role of expert in the development and application of agrometeorology, how they should do. How to establish action to support water and food security. To develop a training and qualification action for farmers, extensions, workers, teachers, and professionals in general. To better use, understand the tools and methodologies for application of agrometeorology. In this aspect, imminent action of Professor Kees Stigter through all the meteorological organizations, KGM, numerous entities and institutions throughout the world must be highlighted. So he was very important person for that. Among many actions of Dr. Stigter, it's worth mentioning the excellent work done by him in the elaboration of update of GAMP, Guide on Agricultural Meteorology Practice. Dr. Stigter's role in information of consent and its wide dissemination was extremely important to consolidate agrometeorology in several regions in the world. Very important. Not only for Africa, South Africa, South Asia, and even Brazil. His role was highly relevant, and also with a view of the future of the application of agrometeorology. His wide vision of agrometeorology and the future of its application bring us focusing in new techniques was bringing for him. But that's what trying to talk to you about research in agrometeorology, what has been done. In Brazil, we have many federal and state level developing actions related to climate and agriculture, like INPE, National Space Institute, National Weather Service, National Disaster Risk Management, Ceará Foundation, Embrapa, National Water Agency, and many others. In the case of the state of São Paulo, it has a weather network since 1890, let's say 131 years of daily collection data. In 1989, it was created what we call CIAGRO, Integrated Agrometeorological Information Center, Ciagro IAC, linked to São Paulo State Secretariat of Food and Supply. They have received, please bring it back. They have received researchers all over many countries. Example here from India, a fellow from India, and many people from Mozambique, Paraguay, Angola, and many other institutes here in Brazil. Try to share and bring about information, how to use climate information for farmers and the extension service. Next, please. What's the objective of the Ciagro? Integrates Center for Agrometeorology Information, planting and seeding, irrigation requirement, soil conservation, tillering, planning of agricultural activities, planting and harvesting, pest and disease control, and support to agriculture zoning. That's the major aspect of Ciagro. That's 32 years working together. Next, please. Here, at the top, we have the weather network we have for São Paulo State. It's based on actually 242 weather stations. Now, probably by the 45 days from now, we have another 15 linking to this area here and this area in São Paulo. Okay. Here is the website where information regarding data collection, other things, and some forecasts for farmers are freely available. No password for that. Any person anywhere in the world they can collect the information and use it for their work. Please, next one, please. Here we have some bulletin monthly that was made considering water crisis in southeastern Brazil, especially for São Paulo State. You have that. You have that. Besides Portuguese, you have also abstract in English, also in Spanish, because Brazil is surrounded by a Spanish country, speaking country here. So have this information, people can access the information all over with no restriction for that. Next, please. Here is the rainfall variability in Campinas, 131 years. You can see for the last decades how rainfall is going down. So how can we work with those information to bring information for farmers, how to handle, how to support that? Next one, please. Please. Next one. Here is monthly meteorological drought index using the SPI and also the SPEI. Was developed, as you can see, for April. It's keeping up to now. Always the drought in São Paulo State, all over southeastern Brazil. We can have problem watching it on television about the energy crisis that we have in São Paulo, increase of energy. Next, please. Here is a bulletin that we prepared for farmers to indicate them what should they do for the planting for the next growing season in São Paulo State, because they should have enough water in the soil to make the planting to start the development for that. So it is indicating here using not only people from research, but also extension service and the other technicians here to give information for farmers. They only should start to plant their summer crops by the second half of October, because before that, there will be not enough water for that. For the last 25 years, we have observed in São Paulo State a delay in the beginning of the rain season. So most of the crops were used to be planted by mid of September. Now it's delayed to end of October. So it is very important for the farmers to consider that. Next one, please. Here, an example. What was the water balancing from March to September of this year? All the state, that's example for Campinas, but all the state was under severe drought. Okay, this was also complicated by the frost we had in July. 3 serious frost, then damaged particularly out-season maize and the vegetable crops, even for citrus and also for sugarcane. They were affected by not only by the drought, but also the frost, even for pasture. It was very important that. Here at the bottom, we have the projection of the water balancing from September 2021 to February 2022. As we can see, only by the second half of October, the farmer should be planting their crops. Before that, we have a large risk of drought. It's very important to consider that. How can we consider aspect in here? I'm sorry that's not possible to have in my presentation here. Every month we have training course for farmers and extension service. From June up to now we have 4, considering the watershed committee or system in São Paulo State. We are planning now 2 more others here, or that's one area nearby some Paraná State, the other northern part of São Paulo, how to bring information, how to use the weather data for farmers, for extension service, for different kinds of crops. In this slide here, we have the mean annual air temperature for Campinas in Brazil, 130 to 139 years. Sorry, 129 years. You can see, if we consider here the long-term air temperature average, consider here, we have increase of 1.5 degrees C. But if we consider from the beginning of the data collection here in Campinas, this are 3 degrees higher. So some aspect to be considered. To focus should be another aspect I believe should be considered for the seminar, considering climate variation and the crop adaptation and the livestock welfare for that. Next one, please. So to conclude, I want to express my thanks to the member of Professor Kees Stigter for his dedication in teaching us how to understand and use agrometeorology. Also thanks Dr. Nabanson and Dr. Hattori for the excellent initiative in the development of this seminar. It is certainly an extremely important step in the consolidation of agrometeorology and its application in the process of establishing water and the food security policy. That's finalizing. I want to thank you for that presentation. That's really very important for us to consider the memory of Kees Stigter, how dedicated his life for agrometeorology. Thank you all, particularly in the memory of Professor Kees Stigter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bonini. Again, all the speakers have been very kind to share their own experiences and their own, like Dr. Bonini was talking about most of research. I was just looking at the last slides that is presented about the temperature. Anyway, we talk about that because we've got time now. Depends now on the next speaker that we have. The last speaker is Professor Sue Walker. Again, it's a big name in the field. She is a principal researcher, agrometeorology, Agriculture Research Council, and Professor Emeritus, University of Free State. She has worked for 43 years in agriculture meteorology research and higher education in Southern Africa and Southeast Asia. A member of International Commission for Irrigation and Drainage, Working Group on Global Climate Change and Agricultural and Water Management, represented South Africa at WMO and Commission on Agriculture Meteorology from 1998 to 2014, and supervised 20 PhD students. With that, Professor Sue Walker, please. You are muted, Sue. Please unmute, Sue.
Yeah, okay, is this better?
Thanks.
Okay, let me just see. I just want to get my timer on so that I can be sure to be doing the right time. Yeah. Okay. Find my slides again. So you can see my slides, can you?
Yes, we can, please.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
You can make a full screen if you like.
Is it now full screen? Okay, so I want to share a little bit about Prof. Kees Stigter as well. And for me, his dream was to take agrometeorology to the farmers and to extension. And so I will share some of my experiences, and especially in Africa and also in Indonesia, where I see that others have already covered the topics. I will just jump over some of them. So as we know, he studied in experimental physics and then went to Africa and worked in Tanzania. And then he always reminded us that his first trip to South Africa was in 1976. And he said he always wanted to return. And so we invited him to be the keynote speaker in October 2006. And then he also evaluated our department at the University of the Free State. Again, he was invited as a Congress keynote speaker in 2008. And then after that, he did a number of roving seminars, and he came every single year until 2016, doing different roving seminars at different times, and sometimes staying for 2 to 3 months in our area. And also, he was funded for a number of those trips by the South African Department of Agriculture. And so we acknowledge their inputs for that. He also spent time supervising at least 2 PhD students from the University of Free State. And really, so that input into people's lives is continuing in South Africa. If we think about what are his main interests, we know that from a young age he was working in citizen science. So he wants to apply science for the public. He worked with microclimatology, micrometeorology.
Sorry, Sue,
Yes.
Your
Yes.
slide is not moving, and also make it a big screen. Make it a presentation mode.
Okay, let me go here. Okay, maybe I must just stop sharing because something seems to have gone wrong here. Let me try again. Sorry.
If you have problem, we can share from our side also if you feel so.
Yeah, let's try again. I think it was because I was muted, and then when I went back, it went funny. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
And it's moving now.
Slide is not moving.
It's not moving.
No. Should we share?
I am able to view it.
You are. Can
Yep.
you see? This one says Stigter's main interests.
Right. Citizen science applied for the public,
Yes.
microclimatology, intercropping systems.
Okay, good. And so, as we've heard already today, much of this was culminated in the Applied Agrometeorology book, and it was very good to hear Dr. Thibault's explanation about his contribution to the book. And I remember that Prof. Kees was obviously anxious that he could publish the book, and was worried often about accidents or something like that. But this really combines a theoretical background and the practical problem solving, and of course many of the case studies. So we often joked that Prof. Kees has his case studies, and some of the case studies I want to just highlight in mainly from Africa today is from Nigeria, from the windbreaks, showing the micrometeorology, and then the underground storage in Sudan and the hedgerows in China. He was always talking about his trips to China and how he helped with the wind erosion there. So if we look at Nigeria, then we know that he really helped with the movement of the sand there, and there'd been a lot of degradation. And then
I think the
even
slides
though
are not moving.
they're not moving,
Yeah.
so you can't see one called Nigeria.
No.
Okay, all right, let's see. Where can I go to?
I think let them make the presentation from
All
the
right.
other side.
It has moved now.
It has moved.
It's stuck again in the same slide. It will not move.
Now gone.
Yeah, now I stopped sharing because you said I can't see.
Malti, can you kindly share?
So if we on slide number 5. Yeah, to go to the
Continue from
next
here.
one. Okay, to go to the next one. Yeah, so as I was saying, in Nigeria, there was a problem with desertification and moving sands. And even though they had planted 20 kilometers of eucalyptus, they hadn't really looked at all the consequences of that. And so Kees was able to come in and help them to understand the theory behind how windbreaks work, and was able to help to promote that. Okay, go to the next one. He also did a lot of work in intercropping in West Africa. Okay, next. If we look in Sudan, when he was working on the picnic model there with a number of different students, he did some detailed micrometeorology measurements within the underground storage of the sorghum in the clay soils, and he monitored the soil moisture and the temperatures, and really showed how the heat was flowing into or out of that stored grain, and therefore he was able to motivate what to do so that you could have a longer grain storage. Next. I won't say anything very much about India because we've had a lot of speakers who've explained his time in India, so we go to the next. If we look at what he was doing in China, he was often in Inner Mongolia, and he was looking at wind erosion and solutions for that, and many times it was about mulches, and he met with many of the local scientists, and many times in very deep rural areas, and looked at how they could do the non-grazing systems on their lower slopes. Okay, thank you. Next. If we look at his work in Kenya, he was working with agroforestry and really looking at the design rules for wind protection. And it was like looking at the mulching and measuring many of the microclimate parameters within the protected area, either from coffee or from one of the other crops. And he would then advise the farmers on how to use those agroforestry experiences to be able to cope with the changing risks. Next. If we come to the next major item of Kees, looking at information for farmers and extension, he really took this information on a regular basis himself to both farmers and to the extension services. Next. So, as we've heard, he had many roving seminars and probably more than 35 in 13 different countries, many in Southern Africa and around the world, in Iran and many other countries we've heard about today. And then he also worked with the science field shops that he developed in Indonesia. So we go to the next. His concept really was around these agromet intermediaries. And we all remember his framework of ABC, and your A was the sustainable livelihood systems, then B was your local adaptation strategies, and C was the support services, and then how those support services were then coming either from research or from extension. Thank you. So if we look at the roving seminars in South Africa, they were hosted by the University of Free State in Bloemfontein, and they were funded by the National Department of Agriculture, and they were for many people from different provinces across our country. And in February 2008, it started with the agromet services, theory and practice. Then in 2011, agrometeorology and sustainable development. 2011, also later in the year, agroforestry and microclimate change. And then in 2015, reaching farmers in a changing climate. And 2016, what climate change means for farmers in Africa. And then we would also visit some of the farmers and the farming systems and water reticulation systems around the country. If we look at the roving seminars in the rest of Southern Africa, while he was in South Africa, we would travel to these countries by car. So as Lesotho was only 1 hour away from Bloemfontein, we went there several times. We also took trips to Swaziland, to Zambia, and to Zimbabwe. And together with these roving seminars, he always had a master's class. So there were groups of people who had special questions. And in Zambia, he also visited at the village with my graduate students. Next. So just a few pictures to remember Swaziland, and of course, Jackie loving her flowers. She was always collecting some seeds from something and relaxing also with other agrometeorologists in South Africa. Next. If we go to Zambia, then this was in one of the Monzi villages in Majika, and here we also worked with the Cape system and with Dr. Durton Nanja. Next. And in Zimbabwe, we were working with the University of Zimbabwe, and later on he was also an honorary professor there, and he went back and was helping those master's students as well. Thank you. Next. So if we now move to working with the farmers in Indonesia, then from 1999, he was visiting in Southeast Asia, and he lectured at different universities in Indonesia, and first starting at Bogor, and somebody's already mentioned this part, and then in Yogyakarta, and finally then working with Indonesia, Universitas Indonesia in Depok, and with Prof. Yunita, who is on this call as well. And so this is some of the story of his farmer engagements in Indramayu and in East Lombok. Next. So if we think about how the science field shop started, then it was first from the RPM farmer field schools that had been organized by FAO and then upscaled in Indonesia. And then it went over to climate field schools. And this was when Prof. Unita joined him as an anthropologist and helping him to look at how the people appear to understand or not understand. And so Prof. Kees asked one day to the farmers, would you like to continue your learning in response to climate change? And of course, they spontaneously replied, yes, please. And so that was when he continued to work, and then he expanded into Indramayu, another regency or province in Indonesia. And this is when the farmers gave it their own name. They called it this information shops. And so some of these farmers, they, even though there was no funding, they kept measuring their daily rainfall. And then they formed their own club, Indramayu Rainfall Observers Club, and this was on the 10th of October in 2010. And that Observers Club is continuing to this day. And then after that, it became called Science Field Shops. And this was following on from the Dutch law shops, where people could get the services and information they needed. Next. So what are these SFS? It's a dialogue between the farmers and the experts and extension. And there's a commitment by each farmer to measure his own rainfall every day. And this was helping him to walk in his own field and observe some things that, just as others have spoken today, which was one of Prof. Kees's important things, observe things. Next. He instituted these climate services in the Rainfall Observer Clubs. The first one was how to measure the rain and what kind of instrument you should use and what kind of ruler. And then also how to take the agroecological observations of growth and development and pest and diseases in your own field. And then the analysis of the rice yields. Are you comparing it across your different seasons or different growing periods? Would you compare with other farmers in different areas, or would you compare across different years? And this would have a seasonal group discussion. Next. The other climate services he introduced was a monthly rainfall scenario outlook. And this was based on the ENSO, either coming from the Australian BOM or from NASA and from the US. He also liked to ask the farmers what kind of experiment did they want. So they did their own experiments in their own field so that they could sustain their yields and reduce the costs, and looked at greenhouse gases, etc. Another one was exchanging of new scientific information and knowledge. And here he would bring in other experts as well as himself. And then the organization of the SFS and the monthly club meetings so that there was a proper constitution, etc. And the newly added climate service is the organization of the data storage of those farmers' agromet rainfall data. Next. So this is Prof. Kees introducing people to the weather and climate in Yogyakarta and also in East Lombok. Next. He, of course, loved the farmers. We know that. And here he is with many different farmers. And even some of these pictures were sent to me by the farmers. And so we know that he always said, soil is no agrometeorology, but you need water, heat, air, biomass. Everything is flowing and changing. And this is agrometeorology. Thank you. Next. He also presented the information to the different government officials, and it was always via translation. So he would be together with the farmers and with the extension. Next. And this is during his last week when he was still working in Indramayu and training the farmers. And you can see here that he was sitting down while he was doing some of the lectures and also congratulating the farmers on their achievements. Next. And of course, just to remind ourselves a few of Prof. Kees's classic slides. So knowing that we have to have research and reality, but reality comes first. Or that we need science, not only climate change science, but all sorts of other kinds of science as well. And then taking that science for policy preparation and policy mandates. So we can see, as others have shared, that Prof. Kees really wanted to go right across the whole value chain. Next. And just one or two last words of what he would say, that we need to use traditional methods and indigenous technologies for coping with climate variability. And then if we fail this test, why should we continue with agrometeorology? Next. And so my thanks to everyone who contributed and sent their slides for me from the University of Free State, from Universitas Indonesia, and from others as well. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Professor Walker. Yes, it just took 20 minutes. That's great. I think on time. Now, I really appreciate all the speakers to stick to the time and I listen now within 5-10 minutes. The time limit that originally was scheduled by Nabangshu that will finish by 4:15 of the time India time. So we have a few minutes there. And two things we could do with the permission of Nabangshu and the other people. Either we can have one or two questions and then finish off on time. Or we'd like to have go on for a few more minutes, 15-20 minutes. I'd prefer that we finish off because stick to the time by 4:15 and finish it off. So if there is a one or two quick questions or comments from anybody, either not to the speakers, but if you want to add anything for Professor Stigter, for example, please, this is the time. But 1 minute to 2 minutes, not much. Each speaker. Anybody? Professor Bhashani, are you still there? He must have left. I saw him. He just raised some. Dr. Ramana Rao, you want to say something? Just 1 or 2 minutes, please.
We should feel happy that today we remember and recollected the contributions of Dr. Stigter to agricultural meteorology, and he has made it a mission to advance agricultural meteorology throughout the world, in all developing countries. And I think our SAFOM also will take his mission to our member countries with the spirit and the light enlightened by Dr. Stigter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Anybody else like to say just one or two? Not many, but maybe next 5 minutes we can do that. Dr. Rao, GS and Rao, like to say that? Yes.
Yeah. Huda, you have Yunita Winarto from Indonesia. She can explain her experiences with him. Yunita,
no, thank
Winarto.
you.
Please.
Thank you very much, for your kind invitation for me to share my experience. And first of all, thank you, Professor Su, for presenting the nice photos and slides from his work in Indonesia. Yeah, I admire Professor Stigter's great, great passion, great interest to deliver the applied agrometeorology to farmers in Indonesia. First, people ask me, how could you meet him? How could you bring him to the fields to the villages. You know, the first time he responded my email, my message in the in the mailing list of farmer field schools, FAO farmer field schools, because at the time, because I did my research on IPM farmer field schools, and I just sent my message to everybody that I'm now filming a women farmers group who just joined a climate field school. So climate field school at that time was delivered by the state, by the Indonesian government. I was there, and I told in the chat, I said that I was observing the climate field schools. And then in a surprise, Professor Kees replied to me that, I wish I could visit your place, because once I already observed and visited the first climate field schools in Indonesia delivered in Indramayu. So climate field school is what you call it, follow the IPM farmer field schools method and approach, delivered in one planting season with the modules, etc. So that's why Professor Su already mentioned in her slide that when Professor Kees Stigter made his best with Jackie to come to the village in the highland, upper highland dry rain fed field, karst ecosystem, he visited there, and I brought him to visit the farmers' fields. The women there was enthusiastic, asking so many questions to Professor Kees. So you see, the climate field schools only for one cropping season. When it finished, then the farmers still kept asking questions because they didn't practice it any longer. And then the climate variability continued. After that, there was a high intensive rainfalls. And at the end of the climate field school, farmers were asked to practice rain harvesting method. And then suddenly there is another season, there was a La Nina. So farmers were questioning, and nobody came and returned to the farmers. So Professor Kees had a great interest to help them straight away. That's why I helped him, because I was in the field as an anthropologist doing my research there. So I learned only by translating, communicating with him intensively, and then translating his talk to farmers. So I learned, the farmers learned. But one thing I learned from Professor Stigter, he was a great scientist, and he was very strict, with the agrometeorologists. He could not, sometimes he could not understand why it is farmers are so sloppy when measuring rainfall and writing their data. Why it is garbage in, garbage out. It is difficult for me to evaluate. So with his scientific perspectives, he perceived the farmers' work and why it was sloppy, why it is, and then farmers kept changing, sometimes changing the rainfall rain gauge, and brought to their home yard, etc. when it was a long value period. So then I had to translate, I had to explain how the situation of the farmer. So he learned a lot. He was willing to listen, and I appreciate his listening and his understanding, and try to formulate what next step that we had to do to help the farmers. So in the last, I think 2008 until 2016, 8 years, he developed gradually the 7 climate services is presented by Professor Su, gradually one by one, not in a sudden. And he strongly refused the module in advance, to have the module in advance, the curriculum. So that's why we learn exactly, as Professor Su said, from the reality. And then he developed how to analyze and to help farmers. So this is my big experience learning agrometeorology from practical works, collaborating with Professor Stigter, Kees Stigter. So thank you to ask me to say something. Yeah.
Thank you, Anita. Really appreciate it. Dr. Rao, GS and Rao, I'd like to say just a couple of minutes, please. Yes, so that we can finish on time. Yep, thanks. Muted, please unmute.
Mike.
Yes, and Rao.
Sorry, yeah, sorry. Oh, thank you. I thought it's nice to listen to the work, the greatest work of the Dr. Stigter. I think it will be a great tribute for us by all the agrometeorologists to initiate an award in the name of Dr. Stigter, either by INSAM or by SAFO, to who, I mean, for any individual or to any organization who are working with for the benefit of the farmers through the extension work. I think many of them are mostly working with this the extension meteorology. So I think this is the time to have to remember him throughout the many years, and also it's a big tribute to him to initiate the this award. I think this is my humble submission, and it is for them to take the president of INSAM and SAFO. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Just one more question, so that is it okay, Namak, we can finish it on time then? Is it all right if we can finish on time?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so we have another 5 minutes to do that, but just one more questions or comments if anybody wants to add to the group, those who not, anyone? If anyone? Gondira, do you want to say something?
Yes, sir.
Please, just a minute.
So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And I was fortunate to have a meeting with Professor Kees in 2006. We had a conference at New Delhi, Vignan Bhavan, in which he was there as one of the delegates or one of the members of the organizing committee. And I was there as delegate, and we could speak about a few minutes. I had an opportunity to speak with him. Then in 2015, I tried to meet him in Netherlands. Sir, I went to Netherlands in 2015 on my personal work to meet my son. During that time, I tried to meet him like anything. Then I got a message that he left Netherlands, Amsterdam, and somewhere in Indonesia, and his health is not quite well like that. And it was very unfortunate, sir. In the last years of him, I wanted to see, but I couldn't see. The second one, sir, Professor Sue Walker. In fact, I am very happy to see her here in the webinar here. And we were there in Nairobi in 2011 as a part of climate risk management in agriculture. Just I gave her a mail in the morning, and he responded immediately. Thank you so much, Dr. Sue Walker. We met after a decade here, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you. I think what we will do, I think we'll just finish complete the discussion. Just Dr. Shivakumar, I think if I request you, because you had presented a number of activities that you have done, and because of the connections problem there, can you just say the impact that you might happen just in one sentence?
Yes, I had very nice connection with Professor Stigter. As I mentioned in my presentation, when I joined WMO in 1996, from 1997 till I was there until 2012, I really had a very good connection with Professor Stigter, and he has contributed so much, as I mentioned to you. For example, the INSAM, establishment of INSAM was very great. And second thing is, he also assisted our Commission for Agriculture Meteorology in providing the guide for agriculture meteorological practices. That's a wonderful guide that he prepared, And all the members of the CAGM were very, very happy with his contribution. So I also liked all the presentations that were made today by various experts who had connection with Professor Stigter. It's very, very nice that we all got together to really present our compliments to Professor Stigter for his contributions to agricultural meteorology. Thank you.
Thanks, Shiv. So what I'll do now, I think as I was given a chance for 5 minutes to speak as a chair, but I think that's why I requested Shiv to give his perspective out of that 5 minutes. So I might take only 2 or 3 minutes just to thanking you, everyone, starting with Navangshu and all the speakers that you have done. And I just had some notes from each of those speakers, like Chibo reflected about personal level of family, but also the book. Similarly, we had Bob talked about fine memories that touched many people's lives, as Kees did. And then we went to Dr. Ramakrishna. He talked about agromet vision, and very nice elaboration, what do you call that, about his engagement with Dr. Kees Stigter, Professor Kees Stigter. Rather, I think a couple of things that I noted: new educational tools for farmers and farmers' perception, the value of observation, weather-sensitive aspect, and hopefully Nabangshu gets that another back. And then we had presentations by Dr. Shivakumar, a very detailed presentation as usual. There's a lot of active. Only thing that I would like to request to Shiva at another time, that the impact that those work that you mentioned, number of things that you mentioned about courses, training modules, and different aspects, seminars. Now in the ongoing activities that's being led by Nabangshu and Dr. Rathor, INSAM and SAFWAM. So we need to think, if we can, 1 or 2 priority activities in line of the vision of Kees Stigter. That's if you remember. So please, I know that a couple of weeks ago you had a meeting again of the SAFWAM capacity building program and a number of other things. I am also engaged and involved in a few of those things. So if we want to come up with 1 or 2 priority action items, I think we do know what Kees wanted, right? And Kees, the Sue Walker, Dr. Bonini, Federica Rossi, everybody talked about what he wanted at the end, UNITA, that Kees wanted to take information. I wrote somewhere here, the information that can be taken to farmers. And we do know that, okay? Applied Agrometallurgy, his book and all that. So please, you need to come up with 1 or 2 action activities to, I know you're working on the SAFWAM and the INSAM. So we need to come up with 1 activity that we can really say that as a follow-up of today's presentation and the time that everybody has given, that we have come up with 1 action plan and 1 activity. So that's the kind of things I like to say, but just one thing I like to mention and then conclude. And many of you in this group, I can see, we were part of the APN Asia Pacific Network funded research project on climate and crop disease risk management. I was leading that project, and we met Kees Stigter, and Jackie came to the meeting in Cambodia. If you recall, Dr. Ramakrishna, Dr. Shivakumar, Dr. Rathor, Dr. Ramana, Dr. GGS and Rao, and many of those people may remember. We were in Cambodia, and not only in Phnom Penh, but we went to Siem Reap as well. And then we met in Dhaka, we met in Hyderabad, and many other places in those few years. So I think the message that we learned from today, that Kees Stigter wanted applied meteorology, agrometeorology, like the climate. Just last slide, I think, came from, Professor Walker, that the climate, just temperature, rainfall, like Bruni mentioned about the research on temperature measurements and all that, and climate change impacts, what happens over time. But the question is just not only climate, temperature, rainfall, water, but the soil. And that's why I think agrometeorology, and one of the first program I think we developed when Shiva Kumar, Dr. Bhimani, myself, S.J. Reddy, agrometeorology, agroclimatology division in ICROSAT. So just not the climate, but bringing climate through soils to the people, through the crops, I think. And Kees Stigter was right on the front of that. And we had the opportunity to work with him and many of you over the years. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, Navanshu and the team, for this honor. Thank you very much. Over to you, Navanshu.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Samsul Huda, for nicely conducting this meeting. I think profuse thanks to you for beginning to end, the way you have, we learned a lot. So as per the expectation, the webinar came out very, very productive. We could hear very good and impressive presentations from 6 eminent agrometeorologists in the world, including Dr. Tiber and Mr. Robert Stefanski. We are very thankful to Dr. Tiber, Mr. Robert Stefanski, Dr. L.S. Rathore, Dr. Federica Rossi, Dr. Urvindo Brunini, Dr. Sue Walker, Dr. Shiva Kumar, Dr. O.I.S. Ramakrishna. Your gracious presence and your presentation, which made us more knowledgeable in different aspects of agrometeorology and ultimately in future in some activities. You have nicely demonstrated the Kees 40 years work in a very stipulated time. It's a great art for all of you. Hats off to all of you, all the speakers, the way you have presented. And also, and also the different thrust areas, in general, today's seminar. We are also grateful to Dr. Samsul Huda for his, the way he has advised me and how we can organize all the meeting. And also, I extend my all heartful thanks to all of you who have participated and spared their valuable time to attend the webinar. With this, we are closing today's program, but we are looking forward to meeting you all in some similar kind of interesting webinar in future. Thanks to all of you for joining today's webinar.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Yeah, bye.
Thank you, Federica.
And we
Thank
hope
you very
we
much.
hope we
Thank
can
you.